What's going on, everybody? It's Caleb. In this video, we're going to go through some of the examples from the Tailwind website and pull them into our application. So the previous video, we installed Tailwind and got it all set up. Now we're going to style our application. And as a principle, don't recreate the wheel if you don't have to, so we're going to use some of their examples. First off, if you want to follow along, I got everything committed to this URL right here, and the last commit is install Tailwind. So let's go ahead and go over to the Tailwind website, and you should be able to go to their docs, and in here you can find examples. So utility first fundamentals, scrolling through here you can find some different examples of little boxes, and the one we're going for is pretty much this. If you remember the example website I showed you, it looks very similar. So that is exactly what I use as an example. So let's go ahead and copy this code here. And this is describing how an individual employee is displayed. So this is going to go in the employee component. So I'll go ahead and actually I'll just remember what we need. So props.name and props.role. So I'm just going to completely delete what we have and paste this here, and then just go through and clean up some of the formatting. That looks a little bit better. And then I think it's just complaining about the image because we need to have a closing slash there. So we want it to be self-closed, save, does a little bit of reformatting. And now let's just go ahead and replace these values here. So we had props.name, and then here we had props.role. There we go. So let's go ahead and start our server. So npm run start. And here we go. Here's our site. We still have that red background, so let's go ahead and delete that. We'll go over into app.js. Get rid of this here. And so far, it looks pretty good. I mean, it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but we're getting there. So I'm not going to go over all of the classes, but let's just take a look at some of them. So you have py, that is padding on the y-axis. 8, this number refers to a certain number of REM, so you can go into the documentation, and for whatever you're looking for, you can just type it in. So padding, and they'll have examples here. So P8 is 2 REM or 32 pixels. Next up, we have the padding on the x-axis. We also have a max width, which is small, which is a certain size you can look up as well. We have margin auto, margin X auto, which will center it, white background, rounded edges. We have space Y2, which if you're not sure what any of those are, you can search by name. So you can just say space and space between. And then we have space Y2. So margin top is a half rem. Now when you see something like SM colon, it's saying only on small screens. And that's pretty much all I'm going to cover when it comes to the individual classes, and we'll cover more as we go on. Now I'm going to change it a little bit because the way I want it to work is that if we have multiple of these employees, it's just going to fill them up throughout the page, and as we zoom in, it'll fill less of them up on the page. So I'm going to do this using the flex keyword, and this will use flexbox. So going back to app.js, we're just going to surround everything with a class name. And I guess maybe we won't put it in this most outer div, rather just the code surrounding the individual employees. So let's go ahead and make a div here, and then I will take the closing div, put that down here. And then everything inside of here is going to adhere to these class rules. So we'll say class name, and inside here we're going to use two things. The first is flex, and then the next is flex wrap. So we will save this and take a look at our site. You can see now it looks a little bit different, where these are actually going to go to the next line if they take up the full page. So first let's learn a little bit about flex. So what you can do is you can search flex here, and there's two sections for flex, so flexbox and grid flex, and then for layout. So if you check flex, there's not an option for that. So what I'll do instead is go to the layout one, and you can see here use flex to create a block level flex container. If we were to remove flex, let's see what that looks like. We'll go over to our site, and it no longer will display them one after the other to fill the page. So we definitely want to have that in there. But what about this flex wrap? What will that do? Well, same thing. If we don't have it, well, it's still going to fill them left to right, but now if there's too many or not enough room, it's just going to squeeze them and push them off of the page. So what we want it to do is if there's not enough room, we want it to drop down to the next line, and that's exactly where flex wrap comes in. And you can find that in the documentation as well. Just search flex wrap, and this will allow items to wrap versus don't wrap. Even with these changes, our site is still awful, so let's go ahead and work on some other improvements. I think one of the easiest changes we can make is inside of the employees. Inside of this class, we can do M-2 to add a margin, so that's going to space out our cards a little bit, and that is already looking a whole lot better. I think we can fix this spacing here by getting rid of the auto margin. So get rid of this line here, save, check it out now, and that looks a little bit better. So what we'll do now is we'll add a few more to see if it rolls around to the next page, and then we'll try to get an image on here. So let's head over to app.js, and I'm just going to take these 3 employees here and copy them like so. And now you can see it rolls over. Let's do one more just to see how it looks with a bunch of them. So it's looking pretty good. Now for the image, you can go ahead and get one off of a free website. I like pexels.com. So the one I'm going to use is this guy right here. It looks like Professor X from X-Men, but this will do. So we'll save that image. Actually, you don't even need to save that image. You can just use the URL, and we're going to go ahead and add a new image attribute to each one of these. So let's go ahead, paste that URL here. And I don't want you to worry too much about this finding all unique images, because in the next video or the one after that, we're going to reformat a little bit how we're doing this, so we're working with more structured data inside of an array. So for now, let's just go ahead and paste this in here a few times. All right, we'll save that. I just did the first 3, and then I'll go ahead and just copy the first 3 again. So we'll just take this 3 here. Alrighty, there we go. We got a bunch of employees now. We should be able to go to our site, do a refresh, and it's still broken. And that's because we need to actually use that image inside of our employee component. So here's the source. We're just going to change this to props.image. And I'm just going to get rid of the alt. Save. And there we go. It looks a little bit better. Now we still need to make them circle. So we're going to do that first, and then I want to get them all centered in the page. That's a really easy fix, so let's just do that real quick. Inside of app.js, we can just say justify center, save, and now they are all centered. I'll show you the magic to making these perfect circles. Even though they're rectangle images, we're going to go over to the employee, and in this image here, we are going to add a few classes, paste this here. So we have object cover, rounded full, height 100, width 100. Save. Take a look now, and there we go, we got circles. You can look up those classes on the Tailwind docs. I'll show you another way, just for a little tip. If you inspect, you can figure out where different CSS properties are coming from based on their class. So for example, object cover is really doing object fit cover. And then rounded full, width is 100 pixels and height is 100 pixels. Now we should have a pretty good responsive application. And let's go ahead and actually try it on the mobile. So to do that, you can open the dev tools, hit this little button here. I'll show what it looks like on a mobile device. That is your basics for this video. In the next episode, we're going to continue working on this, actually try to make it a bit more functional. Right now, it just has the same image for every single one. It has a bunch of repeating data. It has message instead of edit. So we just still have a lot of work to do. And I want to get all the user data from an array of data, because that's going to be a more realistic way of how we might work with data once we have a backend and a database. So I got the basic styling, and we'll add basic styling as we go just to get things to look the way that we want. When you're working with an array, it actually gets a little bit more complicated on the React side. So I'm going to teach you how you can work with an array properly using state and how to map through those elements. So stay tuned. I'll see you in the next video.